I would like to welcome our visitors in the gallery and those watching us via PBCJ and others in our various social media platforms. We hope that you will enjoy today's sitting of the House.
Madam Speaker, may I just inquire, a couple of weeks ago the Speaker of the House had indicated that there were reports from the Auditor-General concerning matters relating to the National Works Agency as well as PICA. Last week, the PICA report was tabled on the basis that it's an executive agency. I'm asking, why has the National Works Agency audit report not been tabled on the same grounds?
The audit report for the National Works Agency is being tabled today. That's the discussion I was just having with the clerk, and it is on its way up for tabling. Not only is the NWA report slated for tabling. As you know, I had indicated last week I had just arrived before 2. My checks indicate that there may also be a report, a special report for the Transport Authority. Now, for the benefit of the public, I'm going to take the time to ensure, and the Parliament, that this issue is clearly understood. There is no difference in the views of the Deputy Speaker and the Speaker of the House. As a matter of fact, on issues that require special attention, there is substantial consultation. The Speaker was at lengths to ensure that not just the Parliament but the public appreciated that as a senior attorney at law, she was very happy to be corrected by a junior attorney. And she was not at all ashamed to make it very public for all to hear. So there is nothing being hidden. All of us sat in the Parliament and previous parliamentarians before us, following a practice that we know with research have come to believe is incorrect. And the Speaker is absolutely correct in saying if we, by practice, are not abiding by the law, we should correct our actions. The executive agencies are few. There are over 140 public bodies. There are currently on the listing, as at March 2017, only 12 executive agencies. Once we started to look at the executive agencies and go over the records, the Administrator General's Department is one, Child Development Agency, the Companies Office of Jamaica, Forestry Department, Jamaica Customs Agency, Jamaica Information Service, Management Institute for National Development, National Environment and Planning Agency, NEPA, Land Agency, which is a National Land Agency, National Works Agency, the NWA, which is why we have asked to have it tabled today, Passport, Immigration and Citizenship Agency, which was tabled by me last week, and last but not least, the Registrar General's Department. So there is nothing untoward, nothing being hidden. Once we realize that we have not tabled a report that is for an executive agency, we will do so immediately upon picking up the error. I am going to reiterate, public bodies, for the appreciation of many in Jamaica, many do not understand why it is that one would pause to say that audits of public bodies should be verified to have been seen by the minister before such reports are tabled. I have been in the Parliament almost 7 years. Public bodies are not audited like ministries, agencies and departments annually, where the minister is expecting an audit, is expecting the permanent secretary to have a discussion. These public bodies are led by CEOs, executive directors other forms of leadership and management that do not report directly to the minister on an ongoing basis. So it has not been a surprise to me to see ministers totally unaware, and if they are not at Parliament on the day a report is laid, the media will actually have far more knowledge of the contents of the report than the minister in question. Allowing the minister a period of no more than 2 months to be able to review, consult with the agency the issues identified by the Auditor-General, and also speaking with the Auditor-General in the event that there are issues to rectify, does not prevent a minister who knows of the situation, who has already verified, who is aware, to table or come and say, Speaker, yes, I'm fine. I have reviewed, I have agreed with the Auditor-General that I am now aware. They can literally table immediately if they'd like, 2 days, 3 days, on the next opportunity available. So the outside limit of 2 months is not a stipulation that we sit and wait for 2 months. We take the people's business very seriously, and we want to ensure that a minister who operates in the executive arm and who has a significant responsibility as well to abide by the laws as a legislator in here is aware when being questioned about the contents of any report that is under their area of responsibility. So we continue to await. I've checked. We have not gotten a response from the Attorney-General as yet, up to now, and I'm sure they're seized of the importance of responding as it relates to public bodies. However, until then, we will continue to lay only the executive agencies and follow what we appreciate to be the law until otherwise instructed.
Financial Administration and Audit. 30.41. Notwithstanding anything to the contrary contained in any other enactment, the Auditor-General may, if he thinks fit, audit the accounts of any public body and shall do so if the House of Representatives by resolution so directs. 2. The Auditor-General's report on his examination and audit of any accounts audited pursuant to subsection 1 shall be transmitted to the appropriate minister for presentation to the House of Representatives. Provided that a. The appropriate minister shall obtain the observations of the public body concerned on any matter to which attention has been called by the Auditor-General in his report, and such observations shall be presented to the House of Representatives with the report. b. If the appropriate minister fails within 2 months after receipt of the report to present it to the House of Representatives, the Auditor-General shall transmit a copy of the report to the Speaker of the House to be presented by him to the House.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. For the record, we see this matter fundamentally differently. We do not think that the law provides for this up to 2 months hiatus after tabling for a minister to indicate whether or not he or she has seen it. The practice of the Auditor-General is to send draft reports to the ministries for the attention of the Permanent Secretary so that the minister can be appraised of the issues before they are tabled, and opportunities are given to the public bodies to respond to any issues in the draft report before the report is finalized. We think that this situation we're now in, where after years and years of established practice and convention, the Speaker comes to her own view on the law and then decides to seek an opinion, in the meantime changing the conventional practice and delaying the tabling of reports on public bodies, is quite inappropriate and wrong, and I want to register my strongest objection to this way of proceeding. And I can't understand why, in a matter of such fundamental importance, the Attorney-General's chambers have not delivered this opinion to the Parliament. And I'm calling on them to do so without further delay. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
I will allow you in a moment, Minister. I will go further to say to you, though I've not been an auditor for many, many, many years, a draft report is not a report. a report is not a report until it is final. And so, though the Auditor General may or may not have made available to the Minister a draft report, when the rubber hits the road, it is at what is called with the ministry, agency, department of government, public body, executive agency, though it may be. At that exit interview, you are given that final ability to resolve issues that the Auditor General may have found to be a concern that you are able to prove is not correct. You are able at that point to say, this issue, I can prove it should be removed from my report. You are at that point able to say, these are the updates and I can prove to you this is where we are at the point of your exit interview. I can tell you my experience in the Parliament at least once. I asked the Permanent Secretary, and even at the point of the exit interview, the Minister in question had no clue that the Auditor General was conducting an exit interview. So, Opposition Leader, I believe, separate and apart from the legal arguments, we must look back at exactly what is the process and paper trail in ensuring that when a report is tabled, it is registered with the date required, and equally when it is presented, that final report is presented to the Minister, it is signed for as received by said Minister, so that we know when time starts to run. The idea is not that you table first and for the Minister to run around like a chicken without head, trying to respond to what they are not aware of.
On this matter, if you look, what can help you to understand more that the Auditor General ought to have sent the report to the Honourable Minister first before it is tabled, because remember, bear this in mind, the law is not preventing the report from being tabled in Parliament, just be clear. The law is setting out a different avenue for which it should be done, but it's not preventing it. Because the law requires that the Minister must table the report, and the law provides a fail-safe that if the Minister fails to do so within 2 months after having received the report from the Auditor General, that the Auditor General herself must send the report to the Speaker now, and the Speaker must table it. So just to be clear, Cliff, that the law is not circumventing as it relates to public bodies, that the report should not go to Parliament. It is setting out a scheme, a procedure for it to go to Parliament, separate and apart from those audits of the central government. So the law is clear. Chris, to embolden my point, I want the public or anyone listening to me to read Section 31 of the Financial Administration and Audit Act, because it sets out clearly that the powers of the Auditor General, as listed in Section 25 to 28 of the Act, shall apply when she is auditing public bodies, but it does not speak to Section 29, because it doesn't need to speak to Section 29, and it deliberately leaves out Section 29, Chris, because Section 29, Chris, deals with special audit of the central government. Now, where does special audit of public bodies exist, Chris? Does it exist in law? Yes, it does. Special audit of public bodies is provided for in Section 12 of the Public Bodies Management Act and Accountability Act, Chris. So there should be no confusion that a special audit under 29 does not apply to public bodies, because the Public Bodies Management Act deals with special audit under Section 12.
So, given the divergence of views on this, Mr. Darling, should this matter therefore be taken to the court for a final resolution? Chris,
let me say boldly here, because this is a matter of law and should not be a matter of politics in any shape or form. And I don't believe any interpretation of the law should be dealt with in any political way. The law is the law. The Speaker is correct, Cliff, in my interpretation right here, Cliff. And it is supported by the very sections of the law. And two, Cliff, the resolution should be had where there is such a conflict, either by seeking the court's intervention, because here what is what I call two constitutional office: the Auditor-General's office and the House of Parliament.
When the former Speaker was forced to resign as a result of an Integrity Commission investigation, the move to replace her with the wife of the Prime Minister, so that the head of Parliament is now the spouse of the head of government, really does not sit well with the tradition that the Speaker must act independently of the government of the day. The Speaker is intended to be independent and must act independently of the government of the day. That is the tradition. That is the tradition. The failure, Mr. Speaker.
Members.
I don't have a microphone, but I'd like to finish my speech. I'm very near the end. So, I hope somebody will film this, and I hope that you'll be able to hear what I say.
We have any media here?
Yes.
Hold on, 1 second.
Your media?
Yes, from the Gleaner.
He's from the Gleaner.
Oh, Gleaner, all right.
Can you hear me though?
Yes, I am.
The point I was making when the Prime Minister chose to walk out and was left the Parliament without a quorum, I think it's the first time this has ever happened in independent Jamaica, that in a budget speech the opposition has been denied the opportunity to finish their presentation. And here I am assembled on Duke Street. I was near the end anyway, but there were some important points that needed to be made, and I'm going to continue. The point I made when they walked out was this: when the former Speaker was forced to resign as a result of an Integrity Commission investigation, the move to replace her with the wife of the Prime Minister, so that the head of Parliament is now the spouse of the head of government, does not sit well with the tradition that the Speaker must act independently of the government of the day. That is a fundamental principle of the Westminster system of democracy. And it is protected in a number of ways. For example, in the United Kingdom, nobody runs against the Speaker in an election. They make sure the Speaker is elected because that person is supposed to be independent. So that, I think, that move to do what happened in our case here was inconsistent with that level of independence that's required. The failure to disclose the identity of the so-called illicit 6 MPs who are under investigation by the Integrity Commission for illicit enrichment remains a festering sore, only made worse by the Prime Minister's gag order on his own cabinet ministers from speaking publicly on matters to do with the Integrity Commission. They don't believe in accountability. When I entered the political arena, there were some entrenched ways of doing things. Making change happen requires a fresh approach. Things will be very different under my watch, because I will tolerate none of it. The next PNP government will institute a fair and balanced recall system for elected officials, both at the local government and parliamentary level, to deepen accountability and empower the voters with recourse where they are badly let down by whoever they elect to Parliament. Change.
The torch has been lighted, the dawn is at hand. Who joins in the fight for his own native land? Land of my birth and race to me, loyal and faithful, true to thee.
All I can say, if I were in your position, I would take with myself and hand over to someone else who is not compromised.
Madam Speaker, it falls to me to address points raised, claims, etc., that are made in the budget debate presentation. And I do so, Madam Speaker, I wish I didn't have to, but the points haven't been made or the claims haven't been made, I am duty bound to respond. Madam Speaker, when the Leader of the Opposition made his contribution to the budget debate, he included the words, "When the former Speaker was forced to resign as a result of the Integrity Commission investigation, the move to replace her with the wife of the Prime Minister, so that the head of Parliament is now the spouse of the head of government, does not sit well with the tradition that the Speaker must act independently of the government of the day." Madam Speaker, as others have pointed out, we on this side, and there are others on the outside, who thought that that was low. Firstly, Madam Speaker, the Speaker of the House served as Deputy Speaker of the House for 3 years, between September 2020 and November 2023. And during that time, she acted as Speaker on several occasions. So it was the Deputy Speaker who was elected to replace the outgoing Speaker, not simply the wife. The fact that in the statement or the speech you refer to her as the wife, not recognizing her 3-year tenure as Deputy Speaker and therefore the natural successor, is, in my view, disrespectful to the highest degree. Madam Speaker, women, like men, are individuals in their own right who ought not to be defined by their relationship with either men or, in the case of when you do this, you subordinate the professional role of the woman or the man. Wife, mother, sister are roles that women sometimes play, much like men are sometimes husbands, brothers, and fathers. But in a professional setting, it does not sit well with the tradition of respect within our society that for you to refer to any female parliamentary colleague by her marital relationship with her husband. By all means, talk about the Speaker's decisions, criticize them if you must, but leave the wife alone. It was out of order, Madam Speaker, and the opposition leader can do better. It reminds me of when the member from East Portland, campaigning in her own right, was derogatorily referred to as the wife of Mr. Vaz. And she won't be anything but the wife of Minister Vaz. There's a trend. Of course she's the wife of Minister Vaz. But in the context of the campaign, she was the Jamaica Labour Party candidate for the seat.
But if you look at potential, the furthest this lady will go is Mrs. Vaz. If you look at potential, how far can I go and how far will you come with me? There is no black man that is truly a Labourite. He's a confused PNP. I have a degree in tourism. I have a master's in tourism. I lecture tourism. And yet still, because of her class and her color, some people said this lady is more qualified than me. And I intend to start the fight against that history. And to prove that I am not going to trim to win so you don't have to bleach to reach. I'm going to explain to you the system. The system is a set of variables that work together to make sure that if the grandmother poor, the granddaughter almost automatically poor. And if the grandfather rich, the grandson almost automatically rich. That is why you have this man who had his father as a parliamentarian. Then now he come and have himself as a parliamentarian. Then he wants to have his wife as a parliamentarian. Like this is a cartoon. You have grandfather shark, you have father shark, you have mother shark, you soon have baby shark. present to you how we plan to fight the system. Because this lady said that she's action and yet she don't have a plan. No, action without plan is failure. What I asked on Wednesday, the workers for the People's National Party, I said, how come a lady with 3 helpers, a walker take up clothes off a line and then she action and she's acting and if this lady beat me, it will be a travesty. I'm going to prove that this is an election between a beautiful face and a beautiful mind.
And the preliminary results, major news networks, they are declaring it for the JLP Anne-Marie Vaz a victory over the PNP's Damian Crawford, a seat that has been in the PNP columns for over 30 years. Anne-Marie Vaz seems, based on the news media reports, seems to be creating history tonight as will be the first female member of parliament in East Portland.
There's another spin to it, you know. Kamisha is trying to get you.
Yes, I was saying, Dennis, I don't think it only had to do with the fact that Anne-Marie Vaz was a woman and Damian Crawford was a man, but the things that were said would have been bad either way. It's all well and good to say, I have the better ideas, because if you're campaigning on ideas, then make it so. But what happened was not really a campaign on ideas coming from one side. It was very, very personal. So you lost anything, his plans, but the attack on Anne-Marie Vaz. And then you would have heard many, many PNP supporters not even being able to call her by her name. It was always the woman.
But he made it gendered. He's the one who made it gendered and then implicated that something about her, which is the fact that she's a white color. No, and where her skin color.
It would have been better had the opposition leader said the move to replace her with the Deputy Speaker of the House, who happens to be the wife of the Prime Minister, etc., etc., etc. But completely ignoring her position in this House, Madam Speaker, was absolutely, and reducing her to only one component, that of wife, was disrespectful, Madam Speaker, and should not be repeated. Madam Speaker, the Deputy Speaker acted, as I said, many times as Speaker for 3 years. And never once, to the best of my knowledge, did any member rise to his or her feet to provide any objection on the account of a marital relationship with the Prime Minister. When the Deputy Speaker was nominated to fill the role of Speaker, her nomination was seconded by none other than the leader of opposition business, the member from East Kingston and Port Royal, Mr. Philip Paulwell, who rose to his feet and said, Madam Speaker, I beg to second the motion. The Speaker was then unanimously elected by both sides of the House with cheers and applause.
Dr. Phillips, frankly, it's been wonderful seeing two brilliant women leading the government and opposition sides in the Senate. But drill down deeper, and you said there are only 2 of 8 opposition senators that are women. That's 25%. 4 of 13 government senators that are women. That's 30%. Politicians talk a good game on gender equality, but here, when it's completely within their control, they don't deliver. Win or lose, Dr. Phillips, would you commit to nominate a slate of at least 50% women to the Senate?
But I think we also need to understand that there are many factors that impede women's participation. The support for child care, for example, in the House and Senate, and generally is one such factor. The fact that women carry a greater share of household work is also another factor. So actually getting the right level of representation is going to take more than just a commitment. We're going to have to deal with all of these other factors that really impede women's full participation. We are committed to dealing with those factors in the People's National Party.
Your rebuttal, Mr. Holness.
I think it's a simple thing that you can do.
which is to ensure that in your recruitment at least you have more women. We have done that in the Jamaica Labour Party. We have been deliberate in going out and seeking to recruit women, and now we have more female candidates representing the party than ever before.
Madam Speaker, the former leader of the opposition, the member from St. Andrew East Central. No, just for people listening, after people listening don't know East Central, says Mr. Peter Phillips. A few sittings later, without invitation or solicitation, rose to his feet on his own accord and addressed the Speaker directly, looking at her and saying, "A major impulse that brought me here today was to see you in your elevated position." Madam Speaker, this was greeted with spontaneous and rapturous applause by both sides of the aisle, including many on that side who applauded that remark. Madam Speaker, the opposition welcomed the promotion of the Deputy Speaker to Speaker and expressed no issues of principle. Madam Speaker, principle is principle. Principle is not something that changes with the wind. Principle is not something that changes when circumstances get tough. Principles are principles, Madam Speaker. Principle is not something that changes because you disagree. Principle is not something that changes because of political opportunity. Principle is principle. And given that the leader of the government opposition business, his full-throttled endorsement of the Deputy Speaker's elevation, the opposition's leader's statement last week, Madam Speaker, publicly undermines and emasculates the member and sends an unmistakable message that we cannot trust what any of them over there says. Because at any time, the opposition leader is likely, at any day, any time, any place, to just flip-flop, to contradict, and to undermine. Now, look, the opposition leader has a disagreement with the Speaker's position on a specific matter. And I support his right to disagree on a specific matter. But rather than address that matter specifically, he raises an objection in principle to her appointment, despite the opposition having supported that principle in the past. That, Madam Speaker, is what you call unprincipled. It is flip-flop, and it is not leadership that you can trust. And we find it over and over again, Madam Speaker. Even in the same speech, the presentation includes unprincipled positions. Madam Speaker, having met, Madam Speaker, on another matter last year with a few opposition MPs who shall remain nameless on the principle of the salary reform for parliamentarians, I introduced the changes via statement in this House in May of 2023. The member from St. Andrew Southeastern, who is the opposition spokesman of finance, his name is Mr. Julian Robinson. He rose to his feet and he said, in the full view of cameras, publicly, the opposition takes no issue with what the minister has announced. Madam Speaker, without the opposition's support, and in this House, Madam Speaker, the public support in this House, as demonstrated by the member from St. Andrew Southeastern, that adjustment for parliamentarians would not have happened. Which is why I met with a group of them before. And they know that. And it is the failure, Madam Speaker, wait. It is the failure of opposition and governments of the day in the past. There's a member here in this House who is visiting from a previous administration, and he can tell you That is a failure of opposition and government to agree in the past that stymied previous efforts on parliamentary compensation. Although the opposition member with finance responsibility got up and publicly gave support on behalf of the opposition to my statement outlining the details, days later, Madam Speaker, the opposition of the opposition leader, meaning opposition run by the opposition leader, issues a statement that completely contradicted the support offered by the opposition finance spokesman, undermined him, emasculated him, Madam Speaker, and meant we cannot trust what he says unless Mark is present. Seemingly for political gain. He emasculates his own colleague who he appointed. That is unprincipled, Madam Speaker. That is flip-flop, and that is not leadership that you can trust. It sends, Madam Speaker, the unmistakable message that we cannot trust. We cannot trust what they say. No, this is a big problem, you know. No, Madam Speaker. So, Madam Speaker, cannot be trusted. This, Madam Speaker, is a problem. It's a problem for Jamaica. And you know why it's a problem for Jamaica? Because government and opposition have to work together. Sometimes. Yeah? And so the opposition leader contradicting, undermining, and emasculating the very people he has appointed, Madam Speaker, is inimical to constructive working relationship. For example, Madam Speaker, it is customary for the House leader on the government side and the leader of opposition business on that side to get together and to talk about matters concerning the House and how issues are going to be dealt with. And, Madam Speaker, in those conversations, they have to make decisions on the fly. They have to agree on the fly, whether it's behind here or it's on the phone. Madam Speaker, the leader of opposition in the House has been in this House for 30 years, including the Senate. 30 years. We have to be able to rely on his word as leader of opposition business. But how can we rely on what he says when the opposition leader forces flip-flop, unprincipled behavior? And he emasculates and undermines his own colleagues, Madam Speaker. It may not be good for their party, but it's certainly not good for Jamaica. And the member from St. Andrews Southeastern, who has responsibility to shadow. He's an opposition spokesman on finance. How can we rely on his word when he's publicly ridiculed, emasculated, and undermined in that way? That is not leadership, Madam Speaker, that anyone can trust. Madam Speaker, the opposition leader can publicly emasculate Philip and Julian. They may not have people to speak up for them, but let me tell you this: don't touch Juliet.
Peter disliked Portia. WikiLeaks document says Phillips labeled Simpson Miller a disaster. Just under a year after the People's National Party, PNP, lost power to the Jamaica Labour Party, JLP, Dr. Peter Phillips agreed with a United States official that Jamaica risked becoming like Haiti if the government failed in its reform efforts and if Portia Simpson Miller, whom he called a disaster for the country, was returned to power, according to a U.S. diplomatic cable made public by WikiLeaks. The cable, dated July 8, 2008, also said that when the U.S. officer asked Phillips if he would ever serve in another Simpson-Miller-led government, the former National Security Minister stated that he never says never, but his answer is no, it would simply be too distasteful. Efforts to reach Phillips last night for a comment on the matter were unsuccessful. Phillips mounted a challenge to Simpson-Miller that same month, reopening wounds in the PNP that never fully healed after the 2006 presidential race in which she triumphed over Phillips, Dr. Omar Davies and Dr. Carl Blythe. The party went into the 2007 general elections divided, a factor which was blamed for its loss after 18 years in power. The U.S. cable said that Phillips continued to mull over whether to challenge Simpson-Miller for control of the PNP during its party congress in September, even as he acknowledged that a recent poll showing her as more popular than Prime Minister Bruce Golding hampered his, Phillips's, ability to challenge her for the leadership. Phillips stated that it was an astonishing possibility that the PNP, after running the country into the ground for the last 18 years, could possibly come back to power, the cable said. According to Phillips, Simpson-Miller, who was in a political free fall after the PNP's defeat in September 2007, has been energized by the most recent poll numbers, the cable added. According to the cable, the U.S. official wrote that Phillips stated that he was thoroughly disappointed with the across-the-board ineptness of Golding's government and placed the blame squarely at Golding's feet for the results of the poll indicating that Simpson-Miller had gained ground and was more popular than Golding. The cable said that in the discussion between Phillips and the U.S. official, which occurred on June 27, Phillips was in a relaxed and talkative mode, compared to when he was the National Security Minister, at which time he could be quite guarded. The U.S. official, the document said, had the opportunity to speak with Phillips about a broad range of topics, including his views on the seeming inability of the government of Jamaica to make headway against spiraling violent crime. According to the cable, when the U.S. official asked Phillips' opinion of an assessment of Jamaica's future, which she, the U.S. official, had heard from several prominent Jamaicans, that Jamaica sits at a precipice, and unless drastic measures are taken in short order then in 5, maximum 10 years Jamaica could become the English-speaking Haiti of Phillips, perhaps because he is now in opposition. Surprisingly, not only did not reject this comparison, he agreed with it. Added the diplomatic note, Phillips's dislike of Simpson-Miller, insistence that he would not serve in another government run by her, and harsh criticism of the PNP's 18-year reign seemed to smack a bit of convenient amnesia, as he served as minister without a portfolio, Minister of Special Projects, Minister of Transport and Works, Minister of Health, and Minister of National Security over successive PNP terms in power from 1993 to 2007. However, as Minister of National Security, Phillips was regarded as a capable administrator of the ministry and as a friend to the United States on crime and security matters.